saving two sisters from raging waters. What happened next changed three lives forever. The river that cut through the town, usually calm and quiet, had begun to rise higher than anyone could remember. People whispered nervously about the unusually strong current and the swollen banks, but life in the town continued, as it always did. Children still played in the narrow streets, and shopkeepers opened their stalls, their feet squelching in the mud. Rajiv walked along the main street, his feet sinking slightly into the wet ground. He carried a small satchel with a few things he had borrowed from the market, some medicine for his grandmother, and a loaf of bread for his family. The rain had slowed to a gentle drizzle, but the sky remained gray and heavy, threatening more. Rajiv liked these quiet moments when the town seemed almost asleep, the usual noise replaced by the soft tapping of raindrops on rooftops. He enjoyed walking alone sometimes, thinking, watching, and noticing details that most people overlooked. As he walked, his mind wandered to the river. He had always felt a strange connection with it. As a child, he would spend hours by its edge, watching the water flow, imagining where it came from and where it went. The river was both calm and dangerous, beautiful and unpredictable. Today, he noticed it was different. The water, usually clear and gentle, was brown with mud, moving faster than usual, carrying branches and leaves along its path. There was a sound he had never heard before, a low, rumbling roar that made the air feel heavy. Further down the street, he spotted two girls playing near the riverbank. They were sisters, Anya and Mira, full of laughter and energy. Anya, the elder at 12, was cautious most of the time, but her younger sister Mira, only 10, had a spirit that often led them into trouble. Today, they had found a small puddle near the river's edge and were splashing in it, their shoes sinking into the mud. They giggled, oblivious to the danger that the river now represented. Rajiv's heart tightened. He knew that the current was too strong for children to be near. He called out, "Anya, Mira, come back from there." "The water is dangerous." His voice carried over the sound of the flowing river, but the girls didn't hear him at first. They were too caught up in their game, throwing mud at each other and laughing. Rajiv picked up his pace, running toward them, slipping slightly on the wet ground. "Girls, please come back," he shouted again, louder this time. Anya looked up, squinting at him. Mira, noticing Rajiv, waved cheerfully. "Don't worry, we're fine," she called out. Rajiv's chest tightened with worry. The river had grown wider, and he could see the water lapping at the grass near their feet. Just a small slip, he thought, could sweep them away. Rajiv reached the riverbank, panting, and knelt down. "Listen to me carefully," he said, keeping his voice calm but firm. "The river is very dangerous today. You cannot play near it. Come back to the path where it is safe." Anya hesitated. She loved the river, and in her mind it had always been safe when she played there with her friends. But the look in Rajiv's eyes made her pause. There was seriousness, concern, and a hint of fear that she had never seen before. Mira, as usual, was restless. But Rajiv— "It's just water, we won't fall," she said, hopping from one foot to another. Rajiv sighed. He knew he had to act quickly. "I'm not asking, I'm telling you. Step back now, please, before it's too late." His voice had urgency now, the kind that made children stop and listen. The wind picked up, and a few heavy drops of rain fell on his face. The river seemed to grow louder, almost as if it were warning them itself. The sisters began moving back slowly, their laughter fading. Rajiv watched them carefully, relieved but still tense. He was about to turn away when he noticed something, a small crack in the muddy bank near where Mira had been standing a moment ago. Water was seeping through, making the ground unstable. A sudden shiver ran down his spine. The girls were oblivious, stepping closer to the edge to see a small frog hopping near the water. Rajiv's heart skipped a beat. "No!" he shouted, and this time his voice carried a raw edge. "Back right now!" Before he could reach them, the ground under Mira's foot gave way slightly. She screamed, losing her balance. Anya tried to grab her hand, but the muddy bank crumbled faster than they could react. Rajiv's lungs tightened as he saw both girls slip toward the rushing water. His feet moved instinctively, running as fast as possible. The river, which had seemed distant moments ago, now loomed large and terrifying. Rajiv could see the panic on the girls' faces. Their small hands reached out desperately, searching for something solid to hold. He jumped forward, stretching his arms toward them. "Grab my hand!" he shouted, lunging through the rain and mud. The water splashed around him, cold and fast. He felt the pull of the current brushing against his legs even before he reached the girls. His mind was focused entirely on saving them. Fear, adrenaline, and determination surged through him, sharpening his senses. Anya's fingers grazed his hand, and he grabbed her wrist firmly. Mira, slipping further into the water, cried out. Rajiv reached with all his strength, his heart pounding in his chest. The current was pulling her away, stronger than he had expected. He grabbed her too, holding both girls tightly against him. The three of them struggled, slipping and sliding in the mud at the edge of the river. Rajiv planted his feet firmly, trying to resist the pull of the water. His muscles burned, his arms ached, but he refused to let go. The girls clung to him, their tiny bodies shaking, their tears mixing with the rain. "Don't worry, I've got you," Rajiv whispered, though the words barely carried over the roar of the river. He searched quickly for something to anchor them. His eyes landed on a fallen tree trunk nearby, partially submerged but stable enough to hold on to. With immense effort, he dragged the girls toward it, each movement a battle against the slippery ground and the strong water. Finally, they reached the trunk. Rajiv told the sisters to hold on tightly. "Wrap your arms around it. Don't let go," he said, his voice steady despite the pounding of his heart. The girls obeyed, their small hands clutching the wood as the water flowed around them. Rajiv pulled them toward the shallower side of the river, inch by inch, careful not to slip. After what felt like an eternity, they reached a safer patch of ground. Rajiv collapsed beside them, exhausted, soaked through from head to toe. The sisters clung to him, crying, shivering, but alive. Relief washed over him, but he knew they had come dangerously close to disaster. The rain continued to fall, but it no longer seemed frightening. The danger had passed, and the three of them lay in the mud, catching their breath. The sound of the river, once threatening, was now a reminder of how fragile life could be. Rajiv looked at Anya and Mira, their eyes wide and filled with gratitude and fear. He smiled gently. "It's okay now, you're safe." Anya hugged him tightly, her small arms barely reaching around his torso. "Thank you, Rajiv," she whispered. Mira buried her face in his shoulder, tears still falling. Rajiv felt a wave of relief mixed with exhaustion and pride. He had acted instinctively, without thinking of his own safety, and it had saved them. As they slowly stood and made their way back to the path, Rajiv noticed the neighbors watching from a distance. Whispers of concern and admiration floated through the air. People would talk about this moment for days, about the courage of one young man who risked everything to save two children. But for Rajiv, it was not about admiration or praise. It was about responsibility, about caring for others, about knowing that sometimes, in a single moment, one person's actions could change the course of someone else's life. He looked back at the river one last time. It was still powerful, still dangerous, but it had reminded him of something even more important: the value of life, the importance of vigilance, and the quiet strength that courage could bring. The sisters held his hands as they walked together toward the safety of their home. The rain had slowed to a gentle drizzle now, and the gray sky seemed lighter. In the distance, the sun hinted at its presence behind the clouds, promising a new day. And though the town had seen many rains and many rivers, that day, it had witnessed an act that would be remembered not for the danger of the water, but for the bravery and care that could save lives when it mattered most. The calm that followed the first moment of danger felt fragile, almost unreal. Rajiv led the sisters along the muddy path away from the river, but deep inside, he knew the threat had not fully passed. The river had grown more restless with every passing hour, swelling beyond its usual banks and swallowing everything near its edge. Patches of water now covered parts of the riverbank, and the soil was soft, slippery, and unpredictable. One wrong step could bring disaster again. Anya held tightly to Rajiv's hand, her small fingers gripping his wet palm with surprising strength. Mira clung to his other hand, her head pressed against his arm. Both girls were silent now, the laughter and carefree energy of earlier replaced with wide-eyed awareness of how close they had come to danger. Rajiv glanced at them, his mind both relieved and alert. The rain had eased into a fine drizzle, but he could see more clouds gathering upstream, dark and heavy. "Are we safe now?" Anya asked softly, her voice trembling. She looked at the river with a mixture of fear and fascination. Rajiv smiled gently, trying to ease her worry without giving false hope. "For now," he said, "but we need to move carefully. The water is unpredictable today. We cannot stay near it." The sisters nodded, trusting him completely. Children often sensed bravery, and Rajiv's calm confidence, despite the lingering danger, gave them comfort. He led them along a narrow trail that followed the edge of the town, but stayed a safe distance from the river. The ground was still slippery, and Rajiv had to watch every step he took. Even the smallest slip here could be dangerous, so he moved deliberately, holding the girls close. As they walked, Rajiv noticed the subtle changes in the environment. Fallen branches, torn leaves, and small debris had begun floating downstream, evidence of the river's rising power. Birds had stopped singing, and even the usual chatter of animals in the fields was quiet. Nature itself seemed to pause, watching the unfolding events. Rajiv felt a strange mixture of awe and caution. The river, normally a friend and a source of beauty, had become a reminder of how quickly things could change. The sisters, though shaken, began to speak again, breaking the silence. "Rajiv, what would have happened if you hadn't come?" Mira asked, her voice almost a whisper. Rajiv's chest tightened at her words. He looked down at her small face, wet with raindrops, eyes wide with innocence and fear. "I don't want to think about that," he said softly. "We are together now, and that's what matters." Anya looked up at him, her eyes filled with questions and gratitude. "You were so brave," she said. "I was so scared, I thought I might be gone." Rajiv shook his head, trying to hide the worry that had gripped him. "Courage doesn't mean you're not afraid. It means you act even when you are afraid." He smiled at them gently. "That's what you need to remember. Always take care, listen to warnings, and respect the river. It may look friendly, but it can be very strong." The girls nodded, absorbing his words. Rajiv felt a surge of hope. Perhaps this moment, terrifying as it had been, would teach them an important lesson about respect for nature and caution. Yet in his mind, he knew that lessons learned through fear often left marks that stayed with you. They continued along the path, moving away from the river as the drizzle continued. Rajiv noticed that the water had begun to creep into parts of the nearby fields. Farmers had left their crops unattended, unable to risk stepping into the muddy, flooded ground. Rajiv thought about the small community that relied on the river for irrigation and daily life. Today, it had given them a test, a reminder of how fragile the balance could be. As they walked, Rajiv kept an eye on the girls' footing. The mud had become thicker, making each step harder. Mira's shoes were already soaked through, and small streams of water ran down her socks. Anya, more cautious, stepped carefully, her arms slightly outstretched to maintain balance. Rajiv encouraged them gently, offering his hand whenever the path became too slippery. Suddenly, they heard a sound, a low, urgent shout coming from behind them. Rajiv spun around, trying to locate the source. A man from the town holding a lantern ran toward them through the mud, waving his arms. "Are you all okay? I saw what happened by the river," he called. Rajiv nodded quickly. "We're fine. The girls were near the water." "I brought them back." The man's eyes softened with relief. "Thank goodness, that river is too strong today. People must be careful." Rajiv smiled faintly. "It is stronger than usual. We were lucky, too lucky." The sisters clung to him quietly, listening to the conversation but still processing the near disaster. Their small hands were cold, and their clothes were wet and muddy. Rajiv noticed the way they shivered and realized how exhausted they must be, both from fear and from holding on during the tense moments by the river. He suggested they take a short break at a small covered stall nearby. The man who had come to check on them helped them sit on a dry bench while Rajiv stepped to the side to speak quietly. "We need to get them cleaned up and warm," he said. "The river is unpredictable today, and it's not safe to return home just yet." The stall owner nodded and offered towels and blankets. The sisters sat together, wrapped in warm cloths, their bodies slowly relaxing as the tension drained away. Rajiv knelt beside them, checking to see if either had been hurt. Thankfully, they had only minor scratches from slipping on the muddy bank. No serious injuries, just a few bruises and cold, wet clothes. As the sisters regained some composure, they began talking about the experience, each in their own way. Anya spoke cautiously, describing how the water had pulled at her feet and how she had felt the ground crumble beneath her. Mira, though younger, was more animated, recounting how scary it had been to slip and see the river rushing past her. Rajiv listened carefully, nodding, offering reassurance and gentle advice. "You see," he said, "the river is powerful. It can look calm, but today it showed us how quickly things can change. We must respect it. You both did well holding on, but always remember to stay away when it's strong." Anya and Mira nodded solemnly, their faces serious now. The playful energy from before had not returned, replaced by understanding and respect. Rajiv felt proud of them for grasping the lesson so quickly. Even in a moment of fear, they were learning courage and awareness. After a while, the rain lessened further, almost stopping. The gray clouds began to break slightly, revealing glimpses of sunlight. The town seemed to breathe again, the tension easing. People returned to their homes and routines cautiously, aware of the river's lingering power but grateful that disaster had been averted. Rajiv helped the sisters to their feet, and they continued walking slowly toward their home. Each step was careful, deliberate, but steady. The river still roared in the distance, a reminder of the danger that had passed but not disappeared. Rajiv's mind reflected on the incident. He knew that the river's strength could easily change lives, and that day had reminded him of the importance of vigilance and courage. The sisters began to lighten up a little as they got closer to home. Mira, always the more expressive of the two, tugged at Rajiv's sleeve. "Can we ever go back to the river?" she asked, curiosity peeking through her fear. Rajiv smiled gently. "Yes, when it's calm and safe, but only when you are sure to stay on the path and listen to warnings. The river can be beautiful, but only if we respect it." Anya nodded, agreeing quietly. Rajiv could see that the lesson had taken root. Both sisters had changed in subtle ways. They were more cautious, more aware, and yet still curious about the world around them. That balance, he thought, was important. By the time they reached the sisters' home, the sky had brightened further. The sunlight reflected off the wet surfaces, creating small, shimmering patterns on the walls and roads. The girls' parents came running out, panic on their faces, relieved to see their children safe. Rajiv explained what had happened, and though the parents were shaken, their gratitude toward him was immense. "You saved them," Anya's mother said, tears in her eyes. "I don't know what we would have done without you." Rajiv simply shook his head. "I just did what anyone should do," he said quietly, but inside he felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Saving lives was never about recognition, but about action, responsibility, and courage. As the parents brought the girls inside to warm up and change, Rajiv stood outside for a moment, looking back toward the river. It was still powerful, but the danger had passed for now. He felt a strange mixture of relief and respect for the force of nature. That river, he realized, could teach lessons in a way nothing else could. Lessons about humility, courage, and the importance of looking out for others. Walking back home, he felt a sense of calm returning. The events of the morning had been intense, terrifying, and exhausting, yet they had also reminded him of something essential. Life could change in a single moment, but so could bravery and kindness. And in the quiet streets of the town, with the river still flowing in the distance, Rajiv carried that knowledge with him, ready for whatever came next. The morning after the near disaster began with a strange quiet in the town. The rain had stopped completely, leaving behind a sky that was still gray but lighter, and streets that glistened with leftover water. The river, which had roared dangerously the previous day, now flowed steadily, though the current was still faster than usual. Rajiv walked toward the river again, this time with the girls at a safer distance, because he wanted to check the banks and ensure no other children were in danger. Anya and Mira walked beside him, quiet and thoughtful. Their small hands occasionally brushed against his sleeve, a subtle reminder of the trust they had placed in him. Both sisters were still processing what had happened. The memory of slipping toward the rushing water, of feeling the ground give way beneath their feet, and of the strength of Rajiv's arms pulling them to safety, lingered vividly in their minds. "Do you think the river will ever be this dangerous again?" Mira asked, her voice low and careful. Rajiv shook his head slowly. "I hope not, but you can never be sure. Rivers can be calm one day and strong the next. That's why you always have to be careful, even if it looks safe." Anya looked at the river, a mixture of fascination and caution in her eyes. "It's beautiful, though," she said softly, "even when it's scary." Rajiv smiled. "Yes, it is. But beauty can be dangerous if you don't respect it. Today you learned something very important. You both were brave, but you were also lucky. Always remember that." The sisters nodded quietly. They did not speak much more as they walked. The path they were following had patches of mud that made walking difficult. Rajiv kept his eyes on the ground, careful not to slip himself. He knew that the river's danger was not only in its water, but also in the slippery banks, broken branches, and hidden debris. Even a small misstep could cause a fall. As they neared a bend in the river, Rajiv noticed movement in the water. A large branch had floated downstream and was now caught against the riverbank. The water swirled around it, creating small waves that lapped dangerously close to the edge. Rajiv pointed to it. "See that? Even small things can make the river stronger. That branch could knock someone off balance if they are too close." Anya's eyes widened. "I never thought of that. I only saw the water." "Exactly," Rajiv said. "You have to watch everything, not just the water. The river has many ways to surprise you." They continued walking, and Rajiv noticed a few other children peeking from behind their homes, curious about the commotion from the day before. He stopped and called to them gently. "Stay away from the river today. It's dangerous. Listen to the adults and be careful." The children nodded quickly, stepping back. Rajiv's presence, calm and confident, seemed to reassure them. They turned back toward their homes, leaving the path clear. The sisters walked silently for a while, each lost in her own thoughts. The experience had changed something in them. Mira, usually impulsive, held her steps carefully, watching where she placed her feet. Anya, always cautious, seemed even more thoughtful, aware now of how quickly things could change. Rajiv noticed the change and felt proud. The near disaster had become a lesson, and they were learning from it without fear controlling them entirely. As they approached a safer part of the riverbank, Rajiv decided to take a small break. He found a dry patch of grass near a large rock and sat down with the girls. The sisters sat close to him, feeling secure. Rajiv watched the river, noticing how the current had slowed slightly, though it remained fast. He thought about the events of the previous day, the sudden slip, the strength of the current, and how fragile the balance between safety and danger could be. "You know," Rajiv said after a while, "what happened yesterday could have been very different if we weren't careful. You both did well holding on, but the river doesn't forgive mistakes easily. It's important to respect it, even when it looks calm." Mira looked up at him. "I was so scared, Rajiv, I thought I might fall again." "You did exactly what you should have," Rajiv said gently. "You held on and didn't panic. That's the most important thing. Fear is normal, but what matters is how you respond to it." Anya nodded. "I was scared too, but seeing you there made me feel safe." Rajiv smiled. "That's why we have to look out for each other. Courage is not about being fearless. It's about helping each other when we are afraid." They sat quietly for a moment, listening to the gentle sound of the flowing water. Rajiv felt a strange peace despite the tension of the previous day. The river was still powerful, still capable of danger, but it also reminded him of life's beauty and unpredictability. The sun began to peek through the clouds, casting a soft light over the water. Small birds cautiously returned to the trees, and a few flowers that had been bent by the rain seemed to stand taller, as if celebrating survival. "Do you think the river will always be this strong in the future?" Anya asked, looking at the ripples. "Not always," Rajiv said. "But it can change quickly. That's why we have to pay attention, be careful, and respect it. Nature is wonderful, but it also demands responsibility." The sisters nodded thoughtfully. Rajiv could see that they were beginning to understand, not just through words, but through experience. The lesson had been real, unforgettable, and it had left an impression on their young minds. As they prepared to leave the spot, Rajiv noticed a small animal near the edge of the water, a little frog struggling to hop over a puddle. He pointed it out to the sisters. "See that? Even the smallest creatures face challenges. We can learn from them too. Stay steady, be careful, and keep trying no matter how hard things get." Mira giggled quietly. "It's funny how such a tiny frog can be so brave." "Exactly," Rajiv said with a smile. "Sometimes courage comes in small packages." They continued their walk, the sisters following carefully, their steps cautious but steady. The town was beginning to wake up fully now. Farmers checked their fields for damage, shopkeepers cleaned the mud from their stalls, and neighbors spoke quietly about the events by the river. Rajiv knew that the story of yesterday's rescue would spread quickly. People would talk about the bravery, the danger, and the lesson learned. But for him, it was not about recognition. It was about understanding, awareness, and the importance of helping others when it mattered most. As they reached a bridge that crossed a smaller stream feeding into the river, Rajiv paused. The water here was calmer, but he could still see signs of the recent rain. The soil eroded, small sticks floating downstream, and wet leaves scattered along the path. He held the girls' hands tightly as they crossed, careful not to slip. "Almost there," he said. "Just a little further and we'll be completely safe." Anya and Mira nodded, their steps careful, their eyes focused. Even in moments of fear, they were learning the value of caution and observation. The experience had left them more mature, more thoughtful, and more aware of the world around them. On the other side of the stream, Rajiv noticed a group of children playing safely under the supervision of their parents. He smiled, relieved to see that the message was spreading. The river could be fun and beautiful, but it demanded respect. Awareness, guidance, and careful observation were the keys to staying safe. As they walked toward the sisters' home, the sunlight grew warmer. The sky, once heavy with rain, now carried a soft glow, painting the wet streets with reflections of gold and silver. The town, still recovering from the flood of the previous day, seemed calmer, quieter, and more thoughtful. People moved with care, aware of the river's lingering presence but grateful for safety. "Rajiv," Anya said quietly, "I think I understand now. The river isn't just water. It's life, powerful and unpredictable. We have to respect it." Rajiv nodded, feeling a surge of pride. "Yes, exactly. You understand perfectly. Nature is beautiful, but it teaches us lessons in its own way. And the most important lesson is respect for life, for others, and for yourself." Mira squeezed his hand. "Thank you, Rajiv. You saved us and you taught us too." "You both saved yourselves too," he said softly, "by holding on, by listening, and by trusting me. Courage comes from many places, not just one person." By the time they reached the sisters' home, the sun had broken through fully, casting warmth over the town. The girls' parents were outside, waiting anxiously. Relief and gratitude washed over them as they saw their children safe. Rajiv explained the events calmly, though he knew the story would be told again and again in the town. The sisters ran inside, excitedly recounting the adventure to their parents, their voices animated though tempered with caution. Rajiv watched for a moment, a quiet smile on his face. He had faced danger, guided the sisters to safety, and now witnessed the start of their understanding and growth. Walking back through the town, Rajiv felt a quiet sense of fulfillment. The river was still there, flowing strong and steady, a reminder of life's power and unpredictability. The memory of yesterday's events and the lessons learned would stay with everyone involved. The river had tested courage, trust, and awareness, and the people had risen to the challenge. And though the day seemed peaceful now, Rajiv knew that nature, in its quiet moments, could change quickly. That awareness, respect, and readiness were the true lessons of the river, and of life itself. White heavy checkmark word count. Tilde 1450, the days after the river incident were quieter, but the memory of it still lingered in Rajiv's mind. The water had calmed somewhat, but he knew the river's strength could return at any moment. Nature was unpredictable, and that unpredictability was both beautiful and dangerous. Rajiv spent the mornings checking the riverbanks, ensuring that nothing dangerous had been left behind by the swollen waters, and that the paths the children used were safe. Anya and Mira had changed in ways that were easy to see. The playful, carefree energy they once had was still there, but it had been replaced with caution, awareness, and respect for the river. They walked with Rajiv, sometimes chatting, sometimes silent, always attentive to their surroundings. Their parents had warned them not to venture near the water alone, and the sisters obeyed, remembering the frightening experience they had survived. One morning, a few days after the incident, Rajiv noticed the river beginning to rise again. The rain upstream had been heavy overnight, and he could see the current growing stronger, more restless. He knew that if it continued, there could be trouble again. He hurried to warn the townspeople, especially those who lived close to the banks. "Everyone needs to be careful," he called out to the nearby families. "The river is rising. Stay away from the edge and keep children inside or on safe paths." Neighbors nodded, some rushing to move small animals and belongings to higher ground. Rajiv's voice carried over the quiet roar of the water, but it was enough to draw attention. He could see worry on their faces, and he knew that they trusted him to keep a watchful eye. Meanwhile, Anya and Mira were watching from a safe distance, both understanding the seriousness of the situation. "Do you think it's going to get as strong as before?" Anya asked, her small hand gripping Rajiv's sleeve. "Possibly," Rajiv said. "We must stay ready, stay cautious, and act if necessary. The river is powerful, and we cannot underestimate it." The girls nodded silently. They were still young, but the events of the previous days had made them more aware of danger and the need for action. Rajiv looked at their faces and felt a deep responsibility. He had saved them once, but he knew the river could test their courage again. This time, he hoped to guide them safely without another frightening incident. As the river continued to swell, Rajiv walked along the banks, checking every spot where the water seemed to be creeping closer. Small patches of mud had given way, creating hidden pockets of weakness that could be dangerous. He noticed that some children were playing too close to the edge, and he called out, guiding them to safer areas. The sisters followed closely, observing and learning from every movement. Suddenly, a cry from across the river caught Rajiv's attention. He turned sharply and saw two boys struggling near a patch of muddy bank that had collapsed under the water. Without thinking, Rajiv sprinted toward the nearest safe entry point, shouting to warn the boys. "Hold on, don't panic, I'm coming." The sisters gasped, recognizing the fear in his voice. They watched from a safe distance, their hearts pounding. Rajiv approached the boys carefully, assessing the best way to help them without putting himself or them at further risk. He found a sturdy tree branch nearby and extended it toward the boys. "Grab it, hold tightly," he shouted. The boys, frightened and soaked, reached for the branch with all their strength. Rajiv anchored himself on solid ground, using his body weight to keep steady. Slowly, carefully, he pulled them toward safety. Each movement required patience, balance, and focus. The current was strong, the mud slippery, and every second mattered. Finally, the boys were out of immediate danger, gasping for breath and trembling. Rajiv helped them to a safe spot, making sure they were steady and unharmed. The sisters ran toward the group, relief washing over their faces. "You see," Rajiv said, kneeling beside the boys, "fear is natural, but staying calm and listening to instructions keeps you safe. Courage is not about rushing into danger. It's about knowing what to do and staying steady." Anya and Mira nodded, absorbing his words. The events of that morning had reinforced everything they had learned before. Bravery was not just about facing danger. It was also about wisdom, caution, and the ability to help others. The parents of the boys arrived soon after, their faces full of concern and gratitude. Rajiv explained what had happened, emphasizing the importance of listening and being careful near the river. The children, though shaken, were safe, and the parents thanked Rajiv for his quick thinking and courage. Once the excitement had passed, Rajiv led the sisters back to a safe area away from the river. The water continued to rise, small waves lapping against the banks, carrying branches and leaves downstream. Rajiv knew that the river could change again at any moment. He looked at the sisters and reminded them once more. "You must remember the river is not our enemy, but it demands respect. Even small mistakes can have serious consequences. Stay alert, stay calm, and always listen to guidance." The sisters nodded, their faces serious. Mira looked up at him and said softly, "I think I understand now, Rajiv. We can be careful and still enjoy it, but we must never forget the danger." "That's right," Rajiv said, smiling. "And one day, when you are older, you will remember these lessons and use them to help others too." The sun began to peek through the clouds, casting soft light over the town. The water glistened in the morning light, beautiful yet powerful, a constant reminder of nature's strength. The sisters walked beside Rajiv, feeling safe and guided. They were learning not just about the river, but about courage, responsibility, and trust. Later that day, Rajiv helped the town set up small safety markers along the banks, warning children and adults about the dangerous spots. He worked alongside neighbors, guiding them on how to recognize unstable ground and areas where the water could rise quickly. The sisters watched, fascinated by his calm authority and careful planning. They began to understand that bravery was not just about daring actions, but also about preparation, observation, and thoughtful decision-making. As the afternoon passed, the sun warmed the streets, drying the mud and leaving the town feeling renewed. The sisters played nearby, but this time they stayed safely away from the river, aware of its power. Rajiv watched them, feeling a sense of pride and hope. The near disaster had transformed not only the girls, but also the town's awareness of nature's force. That evening, the river seemed to settle slightly, though the current was still stronger than usual. Rajiv walked along the banks one last time, ensuring that no one was too close to danger. He thought about the events of the past days, the fear, the quick decisions, and the courage of everyone involved. It had been exhausting, but it had also been rewarding. Every life saved, every lesson learned made the effort worthwhile. As he returned home, he reflected on the changes he had seen in Anya and Mira. They were still young, but the experience had made them more thoughtful, careful, and aware of the world around them. He realized that sometimes life teaches its most important lessons through unexpected challenges. And though the river could be frightening, it had also brought growth, courage, and understanding to those who had faced it wisely. That night, as the family sat together, Rajiv thought about what had happened. The river had tested them all, the children, the townspeople, and himself, but it had also strengthened them. He understood that true bravery was not about recklessness, but about awareness, preparation, and helping others in need. The sisters lay in their beds that night, still thinking about the river. They remembered Rajiv's words, his steady hands, and his calm voice. The fear of the water had not disappeared completely, but it had been replaced with respect, understanding, and a quiet confidence. They knew that one day they would remember this experience not just for the danger, but for the lessons of courage, trust, and awareness that would stay with them forever. And so, life in the town slowly returned to normal. The river, though still powerful and unpredictable, became a symbol of respect and responsibility rather than fear. Rajiv continued his quiet watch, ready to guide, help, and protect whenever needed. The girls, once playful and carefree, had grown wiser in ways that only experience could teach. Together, they had faced fear, learned important lessons, and discovered the strength that comes from courage and careful action. White heavy checkmark word count. Tilde 1450, the days that followed the river's rise were calmer, yet the experience continued to linger in Rajiv's mind. He often walked along the banks, observing the water as it moved steadily and silently. The river no longer roared with dangerous strength, but its presence remained powerful, a reminder of the events that had changed the lives of everyone involved. Rajiv felt a quiet sense of responsibility each time he looked at it, knowing that life could change in a single moment, and that courage, awareness, and care were the true forces that could save it. Anya and Mira had begun to carry themselves differently. The playful energy that had once driven them to explore and take small risks was now balanced by caution and observation. They walked more carefully near the water, their eyes alert to potential danger, but their smiles were still bright, and laughter occasionally broke through their careful steps. The lessons they had learned were deep, subtle, and lasting. Rajiv noticed these changes with a sense of pride. One sunny morning, he took the sisters to the river again, this time from a safe distance and with full supervision. They watched the water flow, learning to observe its movements and patterns. Rajiv pointed out how the current changed in different areas, how some parts were calm while others moved faster, and how debris could create hidden obstacles. "See how the water moves differently in some spots?" he asked. "Even small changes can affect safety. You need to notice everything, the movement, the strength, the obstacles. That's how you stay safe and how you help others stay safe too." Anya nodded, her gaze fixed on the river. "It's like the river is teaching us, isn't it?" "Yes," Rajiv said. "It teaches patience, awareness, and respect. It also teaches courage, but the kind that comes from understanding, not recklessness." Mira, still fascinated, pointed to a floating branch caught against the bank. "That branch could hurt someone, couldn't it?" Rajiv agreed. "Exactly. Even small things can create danger. That's why we always watch carefully and think before acting." The sisters listened attentively, absorbing every word. Rajiv's calm, steady voice helped them connect the lessons of the past with the reality of the present. They began to understand that the river, while beautiful, demanded respect, and that courage was about more than just facing danger. It was about careful observation, preparedness, and helping others. As the morning passed, more townspeople came to the river, curious about its power but cautious because of the warnings Rajiv had helped spread. Children played under the watchful eyes of their parents, learning the boundaries of safety. Adults adjusted their routines, moving livestock and belongings away from the banks and discussing the lessons learned from the recent events. The river, once a quiet part of daily life, had become a teacher for the entire community. Rajiv guided the sisters through the safer areas, showing them how to identify weak patches of mud, unstable rocks, and hidden currents. Each lesson was accompanied by small practical exercises, observing, pointing out hazards, and discussing what could happen in each situation. The girls absorbed everything eagerly, understanding that the knowledge they gained could save lives, including their own. Courage is not just about bravery. Rajiv said as they paused to watch the water swirl around a fallen branch. It's about preparation, awareness, and acting wisely. You can help yourself and others by noticing danger before it becomes a problem. Anya and Mira nodded, their small faces serious. They understood now that fear was natural, but it could be managed with awareness and calm action. The lessons were clear, and their young minds grasped the importance of responsibility and care. Later in the afternoon, Rajiv took a moment to speak privately with the sisters. "You've both changed in a short time," he said softly. "You're more aware, more cautious, and more confident. That's true courage. Remember it. Life will always test you, but you can face challenges with understanding, care, and bravery." Anya smiled faintly. "I feel stronger now, Rajiv. I'm not scared like before." Mira added, "I still feel a little scared sometimes, but I know what to do now." Rajiv nodded, pleased. "That's exactly right. Fear is normal, but knowing how to act makes all the difference." As the sun began to set, the sisters walked with him toward their home. The town had returned to its daily rhythm, and life seemed peaceful once more. The river glimmered in the fading light, calm but always reminding everyone of its presence and power. Rajiv walked with the sisters, reflecting on how much had changed in just a few days. Their lives had been touched by danger, but more importantly, by courage, understanding, and the care of someone willing to act when needed. Back at the sisters' home, their parents waited with anxious but hopeful expressions. Seeing the girls safe and alert brought relief that was almost overwhelming. Rajiv explained the lessons once more, emphasizing the importance of awareness and respect for nature. The parents listened carefully, grateful for his guidance and proud of the changes in their children. Over the following weeks, the town adjusted to the river's new presence in their lives. Community members began organizing small safety programs, teaching children to recognize hazards, stay away from dangerous areas, and help each other when needed. The river, which had once been taken for granted, became a teacher and a guide for the community. Rajiv continued to play a quiet role, observing and advising when necessary, but also giving the townspeople space to learn and grow. Anya and Mira continued their cautious exploration, always under supervision, but with growing confidence. They learned to appreciate the river's beauty while understanding its dangers. They began helping younger children understand the importance of safety, sharing the lessons Rajiv had taught them. Their parents noticed the changes with pride and gratitude. The girls were becoming thoughtful, responsible, and brave, not in the reckless way that comes from ignoring danger, but in the wise, careful way that comes from experience and guidance. One day, as the sisters walked along a safe path near the river, Rajiv stopped and pointed to a small group of birds perched on a branch. "See them?" he asked. "They are careful and aware. They watch everything around them before moving. We can learn from that too." Awareness and patience are part of courage. Anya and Mira watched quietly, taking in the lesson. It was simple but powerful. Courage was not only in action, it was in thought, observation, and understanding. As the weeks passed, the story of the near disaster and the rescue spread throughout the town. Rajiv's bravery was quietly acknowledged by neighbors and friends, but he never sought praise. For him, the true reward was the safety of the children, the awareness that had been instilled, and the growth he had witnessed in Anya and Mira. The sisters often talked about the river, not with fear but with respect. They remembered the moments of danger, the feel of the strong current, and the relief of being pulled to safety. These memories became lessons, shaping their actions, their understanding, and their approach to challenges in life. They learned to trust themselves, to trust guidance, and to act with calm confidence in difficult situations. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low and painted the town in golden light, Rajiv took the sisters to the river one last time, from a safe distance. The water shimmered, calm and peaceful, reflecting the sky. He turned to the girls and said softly, "You've grown a lot since that day. Courage, awareness, and care will guide you in life just as they have here. Remember the lessons and you will always find the right path." Anya smiled, her eyes shining. "We will remember, Rajiv. Thank you for teaching us." Mira nodded eagerly. "And for saving us." Rajiv placed his hands gently on their shoulders. "And for helping each other, that's just as important. Life will always have challenges, but with courage, awareness, and care, you can face them and help others too." As they walked back toward the town, the river behind them glimmered softly in the sunset. It had been a force of fear and danger, but it had also been a teacher. It had brought courage, awareness, and connection. Rajiv felt a deep sense of peace. The lives of the sisters, the town, and even his own had been touched by the events of those days, and the lessons learned would remain forever. The sisters' parents stood at their doorstep, watching them return safely. Gratitude and pride shone on their faces. The community, having witnessed courage and careful action, had grown stronger and more aware. The river, though still powerful, had become a symbol of life's unpredictability, the importance of guidance, and the power of bravery tempered by understanding. As night fell over the town, stars twinkling in the clear sky, Rajiv looked once more at the river. It flowed steadily, quietly, reminding him that life would continue with its challenges and lessons. But he also knew that courage, care, and wisdom could guide people safely through even the strongest currents. And so the lives of three people, Rajiv, Anya, and Mira, had been forever changed. The river had tested them, the danger had taught them, and courage had guided them. Each step, each lesson, and each moment of care had shaped them into stronger, wiser individuals. The memory of fear had been transformed into understanding, the thrill of danger into awareness, and the relief of survival into respect for life itself. The sisters would grow up remembering that day, remembering the river, and remembering Rajiv's calm bravery. They would carry the lessons forward into their lives, sharing awareness, courage, and kindness wherever they went. Rajiv, in turn, would continue to guide, protect, and teach quietly, knowing that true courage was not about recognition, but about saving lives, teaching lessons, and inspiring growth in others. And in that small town by the river, life continued, forever touched by the courage of one young man, the bravery of two sisters, and the flowing lessons of the powerful, unpredictable water.